Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
Welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Luis Rosa, and I'm your host. Today, I have a special show. I was interviewed recently by Dasarte Yarnway of the Young Money podcast. So I want to share that interview with you today. We'll talk about holistic financial planning and a couple of other things that I feel like it's important to today's times. So thank you for tuning in and enjoy the Young Money podcast interview with Dasarte Yarnway, Luis Rosa, Holistic Financial Planning.
You are listening to the Young Money Podcast. I am Dasarte Yarnway, founder and managing director of Berknell Financial Group and Master Builders. You are in for a treat today. Now, this has been a long time coming. Me and this gentleman have a mutual friend, Emlyn Miles Mattingly, who all of our Master Builders know. And I've been hearing things about him for the past year. You got to get Luis on your show. He's a genius. He's InvestmentNews 40 under 40. He does it all. And I kind of danced around it, and we were just probably both just too busy, right, at the time. But we finally collaborated and connected, and here we are on the podcast today. So without further ado, Master Builders, meet Luis Rosa. Luis, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, Mel. Thank you so much, Dasarte. This is an honor. And like you said, this is way long overdue. Hopefully everything you heard about me was good.
It was. It was very good, man. And I just want to say, man, congratulations on all of the success that you've had. You're InvestmentNews 40 under 40, Cfp, EA. I mean, you're doing a lot of the things that many of us want to do, right? So congrats on your success. And with that, just give us a little bit about yourself. For people that don't know, how did you come to work in this financial service space?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, congratulations to you. I know it's been a big year so far. InvestmentNews 40 under 40.
Thank you.
Financial Advisor Magazine, Young Advisors to Watch.
Thank you.
Little Bird told me you launched the Onward merch store. Yeah. Is that right? Oh, man, you talk about killing it. Well, congratulations to you. So let me tell you a little bit about how I get into this. So I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. For those of you that don't know, it's a small island in the Caribbean. It's actually one of a kind. There are two countries on one island. So it's Haiti on one side, Dominican Republic on the other side. Came to the U.S. when I was 11. My main language is Spanish, so I had to learn English. I lived in New York most of my life, Washington Heights, 25 years, and now live in Las Vegas. During that 25-year period, I went to college in New York. I had no idea what a financial planner was. It was not offered in school as a major. There was not a financial planning class in school. I didn't learn anything about finances until much later in life as an adult.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, I had a degree in economics. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Economics is super broad, so I still didn't know my calling. I got introduced to another CFP professional when I was 21, graduating off of college. He was expanding at the time, so he said, hey, if you want to work with me part-time, come on board, I'll teach you the ropes. So I was working in a mailroom during the day, and then at night, I would leave the mailroom and go to the CFP professional's office, and I just sat down in client meetings. And to be honest with you, it took me a few months to kind of figure out what a financial planner did, because every meeting was different. And it finally dawned on me, all right, we're problem solvers to a high degree. And we also kind of just figure out how to have people go from where they are to where they want to be. Yeah. And I really fell in love with it. It fascinated me how everything was so different, so dynamic. It wasn't like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And I started doing it, slowly getting my securities registration licenses, a Series 6 and stockbroker's license, Series 7. I got a mortgage license at some point. I got life insurance license, even homeowners insurance and property.
You got it all.
We were doing it all. And we were trying to make it a one-stop shop, which was great for me because I got exposed to so many different aspects of a person's personal finance. And eventually, I got my IRS enrolled agent certification, which allows me not only to just prepare tax returns, but also to represent people before the IRS, which is not something I look forward to doing at all, right? But it's part of the package deal with the IRS credential. I could, in fact, go to IRS tax court, but hopefully I never have to do that. Mm-hmm. And then eventually in 2016, I said, I've been doing this long enough. I think it's overdue for me to get my CFP certification. So I went for it. And here I am. Fast forward, I now own my own firm. It's a fee-only RIA. So I'm following in your footsteps in this case. And it's called Build a Better Financial Future. And I'm the founder and sole proprietor of it. And I'm just here, just trying to provide some good advice to folks to help them on their way.
Absolutely. It's safe to say that you're good at taking tests. You listed all of the credentials along the spectrum. So I'm super impressed, man. And, you inspire people like me to continue to go, not only from a formation standpoint of the firm and how to serve clients, but also a competency standpoint, right? It's good to know these things because those things are going to trickle down and be valuable to your clients. So you're setting the example. I wanted to just touch on you and growing up or being born in the Dominican Republic, right? For me, my family's from West Africa, Liberia, right? So my parents came, I'm first generation, and being here, they didn't tell me like, this is what you need to do to be in a sound financial footing. Most of all, because they were trying to figure it out themselves, right? The American system, capitalism, what does it mean to have credit? What does it mean to do these things, right? So when you're learning something, you oftentimes can't teach somebody the thing that you're actively learning. So what does that mean to you as you try to help folks? Because I'm sure like me, you feel like you have the responsibility to give people the tools, right, to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a great point. You can't teach something that you don't know yet yourself and you're going through it. Mm-hmm. My parents, to this day, never had any of the typical things that we attribute to being comfortable or even not even rich, just proper finances. Like my parents never owned a car. Growing up in the Dominican Republic, it was very common to have blackouts. So you couldn't take electricity for granted. It was something that just came and went. And sometimes it was gone for a few days. It would come back. So you got used to living on a day-to-day where you went food shopping daily because you couldn't keep anything in the fridge because things might spoil. And you just learn how to make do with what you had and then plan around it, believe it or not, kind of like, well, let me buy powdered milk because I don't need to put that in the refrigerator versus an actual gallon of milk that could spoil, right? So little things like that. So when we came to New York, I was surprised that even though there was one point where there were 10 of us in a one-bedroom apartment, my parents had to divide the living room with plywood and made like a little bedroom for themselves. And then there were 8 of us in the other room. And I was like grandparents. There's 6 of us, siblings. And I remember my first meal, those little plates that you get under the coffee and the tea cups. Yeah. That I had to eat on one of those because we still hadn't even had, like China that we had bought for the house or anything. So I learned a lot as far as like how to make do with things, but I didn't learn financial planning or even concepts that were just foreign to my parents. Like even when I went to college, they still don't know English, my parents to this day. So they couldn't help me fill out the financial aid forms, the FAFSA. They didn't know about student loans. They didn't know about tax returns, anything that I might have needed help with. They had no idea. They were more like, we work hard. We give you a roof over your head. This is what my parents told me. Roof over your head. We put food on your plate. Everything else, you got to go out and get. So I couldn't get the Calvin Kleins and the Jordans from my parents. I had to go and get a job. I've been working since I was 7 years old.
Understood. And can you blame them? Is the question, right? Because I'm like, wow, if my mom would have stayed on the rubber plantation where she was born, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do anything. Any of this. So that's the opportunity. So I don't blame them. Big up to your parents and big up to you for making the most of what you had. I think that brings me to, our main conversation of the podcast, holistic financial planning with you, Luis Rosa. Let's talk about it. So holistic financial planning, what does that all encompass to you? What does that mean?
So to me, that it's taking an approach, looking at a person's values and not just numbers. It's kind of like funny. You mentioned Emlyn at the beginning. He always says, we get the numbers right and the people wrong, right? And I love that because it's not a one size fits all. And you can't just plug numbers into a spreadsheet and say, here you go. Because there are things that a planner needs to understand based on the current situation of the client. And we're talking like cultural norms. For example, in my culture, it's very common for us to still like give money to our parents, They might not need it, right? But that's just how we grew up from kids. Like And then I have clients who are in the middle where they're helping their parents and a young sibling to go to school. And those are non-negotiables. And those are kind of things that you can't, it's not textbook. Yeah, from a financial standpoint, you could tell, you know what, why don't you stop helping your sister? But you can't do that, right? So it's based on the client's goals. So we're not looking at things just like investments and tax only. It's an overall thing. And we're going to look at, where do you want to be tomorrow? Here's where you are today. And then here's the path to get there. And it's not for me to decide or judge whatever that path is. And then come up with alternatives too, because life keeps changing. So the other thing that's part of it is just the ongoing aspect of it. So I'm never going to hand you a binder and say, hey, here's your financial plan. See you in a year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the deep part of the relationship is the important part of a financial plan or holistic planning, because things change, while we can cover things. And the way I look at it is we use an acronym, RITE, RIITE, retirement, investments, insurance, taxes, and estate planning. Of course, you're going to couple the budget in there, just like you said, norms or things that you're used to, right? But we have to have a deep relationship to make this thing work, right? Because it's inevitable that life is going to force you to pivot, or you might just change your mind. So I agree with you 100%. One of the things that I see in your credentials, your long list of credentials that I didn't even know, was that you're a CFP and you're an EA. We talked about that I said that in the introduction. What are some of the most common things that people might overlook when it comes to their financial plan? I'm sure you see a lot of cases. And I think that our job, as you said, is to be a solutionist for these clients, right? To solve their problems. So what are some things that you see often that people might overlook as it pertains to their plans?
Yeah, the one thing I see people overlook is the importance of having an emergency savings. And sometimes that could sound very cliche because you hear it all the time, emergency fund, 3 to 6 months, right? Depending on who you talk to. But I feel like this particular time, COVID-19, quarantine, people being laid off has really put into focus how important it is to have money saved without regard to the interest rate that you're accumulating. You're not going to get rich off of your emergency savings. That's not the purpose of it. You just want something that is liquid, which means it's easily accessible. And maybe you're making a decent interest rate to keep up with inflation somewhat. But that is one of the things that I see people that tend to overlook because they have other priorities, like getting rid of credit cards and student loans, which is completely understandable. But the focus should also be on having something. Maybe you can have 6 months of expenses, but maybe you could have $1,000. So that's one thing I see people overlook. The second thing is also paying double-digit interest on credit cards.
Yeah,
you're not going to get rich paying 24% on a credit card. And sometimes you see people that are chasing interest on one way, like, oh, what rate am I getting on my emergency savings? But at the same time, they're paying 24% on a credit card, or they're trying to buy fractional shares on a brokerage account, but they're paying 24% on the credit card. So when you think about it from that standpoint, you're probably not going to get 24% rate of return on your investments in the short term, right? So might as well pay that debt off first before you move on. And then the last thing is, this my enrolled agent hat on, is just not using the tax code to their advantage. You're not required to pay as much tax as you can. There are lots of ways that you could legally lower your tax bill, and it's completely there for you to explore and take advantage of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like what you said about the second one. Can you repeat that for our audience? That was gold.
The one about not getting rich, paying 24% on a credit card?
Yes, paying that down. The thought that came to my mind was paying that down is the biggest rate of return that you can have. Hands down. Right?
Exactly.
The biggest rate of return that you can have. And I think that people overlook that because it's like, the market probably isn't going to do this every year over the long term. So why don't we get that back first? That's an easy thing to gain. I love that. You talked about turbulent times, right? Holistic financial planning is important to me because it gives people a roadmap. It gives people a roadmap through the hard times. Now, how do you think that this could be beneficial for people during the time of COVID? Like if you would have had a financial plan, I think that would have made you feel better during this time. But what's your take on it? And do you think that financial planning is going to be even more important going forward?
Yes. And I love what you said about it being a roadmap, because we all been there, right? We get in our cars, we pop in Google Maps or whatever. And sometimes there's traffic or an accident and you get that reroute notice, right? That's exactly what a financial plan is going to help you do. It's like, you know what? We didn't plan for COVID-19. We didn't plan for you to lose your job or your spouse to lose your job or for you to be quarantined and maybe making 75% of your income. But because of the things that we put in place, like an emergency savings, et cetera, we can help you navigate and also react to things that weren't in place. For example, like the CARES Act. If you're a self-employed person or things like that, like a financial planner can sit down with you and be like, this is what's available right now. Let's look into mortgage forbearance. How about your student loans? Maybe we could defer those until September 30th and take that money and reroute it towards your emergency savings or towards that 24% credit card. So it's an ongoing roadmap that we can help navigate. So I feel like that's the key to it, is the ongoing part of it, because the financial planning is going to give you that confidence. And you bring up another great point, which is this is something that people have a misconception that you need a financial planner only if you are rich. It's kind of like thinking that you need a gym if you're fit. Like, no, you need to go to the gym to get fit. You need to go to a financial planner to get your finances in order, which is why I love what we're doing now, because the industry has traditionally been geared towards people to invest their money.
Right.
And I think a lot of people get those two terms confused, not through a fault of their own, where it's like, well, I don't have any money to invest, so I can't see a financial plan. And that's completely far from the truth. You need to learn how to save, how to get rid of your debt, how to take advantage of your employee benefits. When you get a new job and you get that 401k plan document, how do you know what options to choose? What funds should I take from there? Is my employer matching? Like all kinds of things like that we can help people with. So it's just about navigating and always planning forward. And there's always more than one way to get to a goal. So that's the key to it right there.
I agree with you. You say that would be like going to a gym to only if you're fit, right? You need to go to the gym to get fit. I would add to that you need to go to a gym to sustain the progress that you've made. Yes. And I think that when it comes to financial planning, people don't understand that. Like, this is an ongoing relationship with a financial planner, right? So you have to work with this person to sustain, and maybe they can provide value as you level up in your financial life. So I think that's gold. The last question that I have for you before we get to the 3 Young Money questions was, what are 3 things that a person can do to get a handle on their financial life today? If they're coming out of COVID-19, noticing that they could have been better prepared for this situation, or if they just feel like finances were something that's always been lingering over their head, what are 3 things that they could do to take control of their finances?
Number 1, I would say, pay yourself first. I love this Warren Buffett quote that says, don't save what's left after spending, but rather spend what's left after saving. Number 2 is give every dollar a destination. I like to say that instead of saying a budget, because going back to our analogy with the gym, people hate the B word. When you say budget, it immediately feels like restrictive, like, I'm restricting myself. But think about it this way. The United States government has a budget. Local governments have a budget. Businesses have a budget. You need to know where your money is going. So if you give it, I say live paycheck to paycheck on purpose. And what I mean by that is have your savings go into one bucket, have your vacation money go to another bucket, have your credit card monies that you're spending to pay debt down go into a third bucket, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the month, there's 0 left purposely, because otherwise you're just not going to know where you're going, right? If you don't have a plan for it. And number 3 is to automate your savings, because a lot of us have all these subscriptions and everything coming out directly out of either a credit card or a checking account, but sometimes we fail to do the same for us. So you want to save $200 a month, make that an automatic thing right out of your paycheck, go into a separate savings account, out of sight, out of mind. And I feel like those are the top 3 things. Pay yourself first, give every dollar a destination, and automate.
I love that. Give every dollar a destination. I say to my clients, we want to capture everything in a line item. So when we review that budget, we see every single thing that they've been spending money on. That's gold right there.
Awesome.
I want to take this time to transition into my favorite part of the podcast, the 3 Young Money questions. This is the part of the podcast where we get inside of your mind and figure out what wealth means to you. So, Louis, if you're ready, I'll ask you the first question.
Hit me.
Question number 1. Wealth to me means blank.
Freedom of choice.
Okay.
To me, being wealthy means not having to do things because you have to keep the lights on. It means saying, you know what, I can volunteer 3 days a week because my finances are right. It means I can work on something that I love, even if it doesn't bring in as much money, but at least I'm getting that fulfillment. Just having that choice and saying, you know what, I didn't like living in California. I'm going to move to the East Coast because I can, right? Yeah. That's what it means to me, freedom of choice.
Okay. I like that. We get a lot of people that answer with freedom. So I love it when people like expand on what freedom means to them. Number 2, I want my legacy to be blank.
Impact. If I could choose one thing, I want my legacy to be impact. I feel like as one person, there's only so much I can do, right? So on a one-on-one basis, I can't have 5,000 clients that I serve myself. Maybe I'll tap out at 150 or so, right? So I want to create something that has a much broader impact than what I can do individually. And whether that's through a podcast or a book, digital course, or teaming up with other people that have the same aligned goals and values like I do. I want to have that kind of impact. One of the things I want to do, since we're talking about impact, that I will do this year is I'm going to go back to the school that I went to. I went to Catholic school in the Dominican Republic from kindergarten to 6th grade. And I want to go back there and donate something. I have to call them up and see what's the best thing that would help. Obviously, I know money is the short answer, but is it using that money to pay for the uniforms to the local kids that go there? Is it just paying for tuition? I got to see how that's going to play out. But that's one of the things I want to have, because if I can do that for even like 5 kids, that one day could be like, wow, like some complete stranger just like paid for my uniforms or something. Like, I feel like that's going to have some weight that you just can't buy with money. It's beyond that.
Tupac Shakur said, I might not change the world, but I might spark the mind that does.
Yes.
And I think that through the work that we do, we could be the people that spark the minds that may change the world. So those uniforms could be like, yo, I need to take school seriously because this person believes in me. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that that's a beautiful thing to do. Last question. Question number 3. I plan on building this wealth and creating this legacy by doing blank.
So one thing is diversifying revenue streams. I have my business where I do tax preparation, I do financial planning, I do investment management. I want to do something else. I do have my podcast. I didn't set out with the intention of monetizing that, but who knows with that. I'm definitely open to that if it has a wide audience enough, right? Also, what else I can do? Oh, like I said before, maybe like a digital course of some sort or a book like you did, something that's aligned with my goals, that has a broader reach, and at the same time can make money I'm not just physically there doing the actual work. So some sort of intellectual property. I want to also team up with others that have the same values and goals as me, because I'm like, I know I'm just one person and I can't impact everybody, but if somehow there's other people that have the same kind of values and goals that I have, we could team up, open an organization, nonprofit, whatever it is, we can make a much bigger impact than I could on my own. And I feel like there are ways that you could make impact and make money at the same time. So I want to diversify my income streams and create something that's larger than what I could reach on an individual level.
Absolutely, man. Louis, you shed a bunch of light on holistic financial planning. I feel like our listeners will go back and think about their personal finances a bit differently. For anybody that wants to connect with you, where can they reach you? Give us your socials so we can keep in touch.
Oh, yeah. So it's Luis, LUIS _ F as in Frank _ Rosa, ROSA, at Instagram and Twitter. If you go to my company website, buildabetterfinancialfuture.com. Also, my podcast is called On My Way to Wealth. You can go to onmywaytowealth.com, and all the links to the social media are there as well.
Well, thank you again, Louis, for joining us here on the Young Money Podcast. And thank you all for listening. You are Young Money, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.